Jeffrey! Jeffrey! I hate you! I hate you!
17 young men and boys lured, drugged, strangled, photographed, dismembered, and in some cases, eaten. He kept skulls in the closet. He boiled hearts on the stove. He drilled holes in the heads of living victims, poured acid in, and called it love. Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't just a serial killer. He was America's quietest nightmare, living in plain sight, smiling at his neighbors, and storing heads in his fridge. He didn't kill out of rage. He killed because he didn't want to be alone. And when police finally broke into his Milwaukee apartment, they didn't just find a killer. They found a museum of human remains. This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, the cannibal of Milwaukee, the man who turned murder into routine. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960 to what looked on paper like a typical American family. But inside that house was chaos. A mother crippled by mental illness, paranoia, anxiety, and repeated suicide attempts. A father obsessed with science, cold, logical, often absent. No affection, no stability, no warmth. Dahmer was left alone, emotionally abandoned in the most formative years of his life. As a child, he was painfully shy, awkward. But then, something darker crept in. Jeffrey became obsessed with dead animals, roadkill, bones, carcasses. He would collect them, dissolve them in acid, arrange their skeletons, and store them in jars. Not out of fear, but out of fascination. He once asked his father what would happen if he bleached the flesh off a dead dog. His father, a chemist, was proud of the curiosity. He didn't see the warning signs, but they were there, in the backyard, buried in the woods, floating in bleach. As he reached adolescence, Jeffrey's obsession with death fused with something else, intense physiological reaction. He admitted to fantasizing about controlling unconscious men, not to love them, but to possess them. The idea of owning a body, of having it forever, began to grow. Quietly, powerfully. He didn't want partners. He wanted puppets. And by the time he turned 17, the thoughts weren't fantasies anymore. They were urges. They were blueprints. The boy who played with bones was now dreaming of bodies, and his first opportunity was coming soon. In June 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer picked up Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker on his way to a rock concert. They drank in the living room, they joked, listened to music. But when Hicks stood up to leave, Dahmer made a decision. He walked behind him, grabbed a dumbbell, and crushed his skull. Hicks fell, still breathing. Dahmer wrapped his hands around the boy's neck and squeezed until he stopped. He didn't scream. He didn't flinch. He just watched. He dragged the body into the basement, undressed it, stared at it, then began to cut. Knife through skin, joints separated, organs removed, one by one. He boiled the flesh off the bones in bleach, crushed the skeleton with a sledgehammer behind the house, scattered the pieces in the woods near his backyard. Days later, he went to dinner with his family, slept in his bed, returned to school like nothing happened. No hesitation, no remorse, no slip, just control. Then, silence. For 9 years, there were no bodies. He entered the army, drifted through cities, fell into alcohol, but the impulse didn't go away. It just waited. Sharper. Louder. The next time he killed, he wouldn't stop. He couldn't. And the spree was about to begin. If you're still here, you're the kind of viewer we make this for. Like, subscribe, and follow for more real crime and darker cases to come. Tell us in the comments what moment made your jaw drop. After nearly 9 years of silence, the urge returned. Jeffrey Dahmer had drifted from the army to Miami, then back to Ohio. He drank heavily, slept on couches, watched strangers pass him by. But nothing filled the hole. Not alcohol, not sex, not solitude. In 1987, it snapped again. He met Stephen Tuomi, a 25-year-old, at a gay bar in Milwaukee. They drank, talked, then headed to a hotel room together. What happened next was never fully clear, even to Dahmer. He claimed he didn't plan to kill, that he woke up and Tuomi was dead. Blood on the bed, bruises on the chest. His fists were sore. But whether it was blacked out or not, he didn't run. He didn't panic. He bought a suitcase. He stuffed Tuomi's body inside, wheeled it out through the lobby, and took it home. In his grandmother's basement, he dissected the body, removed flesh, wrapped the organs, crushed the bones with a dumbbell, flushed what he could down the toilet. The rest scattered behind the house. There was no struggle, no consequence, and for the first time, Dahmer felt in control. That murder unlocked something deeper. He wasn't just chasing silence anymore. He wanted possession. The body wasn't just a corpse. It was his to keep, to shape, to control. He began to experiment. He preserved skulls in bleach, kept trophies in shoe boxes, stored bones in drawers next to razors and Polaroids. From that point on, it was no longer about rage. It was ritual, pleasure, ownership. And with every body that followed, the process would get faster, cleaner, and far more terrifying. By the end of the 1980s, Jeffrey Dahmer had perfected his method. He'd go to bars, quiet, dimly lit places where men could vanish without a trace. He would offer money, drinks, or photo shoots, a simple invitation back to his apartment. Once inside, everything was set. The lighting was low, the mattress stripped, the rum bottle already laced with sleeping pills. As the victim grew drowsy, Dahmer would wait in silence, watch their eyes blur, then strike. A hand around the neck, a knee on the chest, no noise, no panic, just routine. After the kill, he moved with purpose. He stripped the body, positioned it, photographed it from angles he'd imagined before even bringing them home. Then came the dissection, the removal of organs, the boiling of flesh. He stored skulls in boxes, genitals in jars, and hearts in the freezer, labeled. One body became two became 5. By 1991, there were 13. What shocked investigators later wasn't just the number of victims, it was the scale of organization. He had a designated cutting station, a shelf for skulls cleaned and bleached, chemical containers labeled for liquefying flesh, a vat of acid for bones, and in the fridge, bags of meat, human meat. But he wanted more. Dead bodies weren't enough. He wanted obedience, living puppets who couldn't leave. So he tried to create them. He began drilling into his victims' skulls while they were still alive. He injected boiling water, then acid, hoping it would erase thought, leave them docile, breathing, but brain dead. Test after test failed. Some screamed, some fled, some died with their eyes wide open, staring at the man they trusted hours earlier. The more he failed, the more violent he became. He cannibalized parts of his victims, not just for control, but for connection. He said he
can't
wanted
think of
them to be
anything
part
that
of
would
me.
have stopped me.
He ate biceps,
Jeff
cooked
told us
hearts,
when he was in
saved
prison
entire skeletons.
that he
At
should
this
never be
point,
turned loose
Dahmer wasn't
because he would do
killing
the
to
same
silence a
thing again.
voice inside
Now
him.
that requires a
He was
great deal
feeding
of
it.
soul.
By the summer of 1991, the apartment smelled like rot and chemicals. Neighbors complained. The building manager called. But Dahmer smiled, apologized, blamed it on spoiled meat. He had grown reckless. The kills were closer together, louder, sloppier. On July 22nd, he brought home his next victim, Tracy Edwards, 32 years old. Same routine. Offer money, pose for photos, share a drink. But something was off. Edwards noticed knives, chemical bottles, acid jugs stacked beside a blue barrel. And the smell. It wasn't meat. Then he saw the cuffs. Dahmer lunged, snapped one around Tracy's wrist. But Edwards didn't freeze. He stayed calm, talked, stalled, waited for a chance. When Dahmer turned his back, Edwards punched him and ran. He found police, told them a man tried to kill him. The cops followed him back to apartment 213. At first, Dahmer acted polite, calm, even helpful, until one officer opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was a stack of Polaroids, each one showing dismembered bodies in stages of decay. Then they opened the fridge and saw a severed human head on the bottom shelf. What followed was one of the most horrifying crime scene discoveries in modern U.S. history. 4 severed heads in the kitchen, 2 human hearts in a bag, 7 skulls throughout the apartment, hands, feet, torsos in the freezer, 3 preserved penises in jars, a vat of acid filled with decomposing remains, and in the bedroom, a 57-gallon barrel filled with flesh. Everything labeled, organized, stored like a collector's archive. One officer muttered, "This is a house of horrors." Dahmer was arrested on the spot. He didn't resist. He simply said,
"For what I did, I should be dead."
But he wasn't. Not yet. But behind that calm face was a storm of madness waiting to be dissected, in court and inside his mind. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the aisles. Families of the victims sat in silence, clutching photographs and prayers. And at the center of it all sat Jeffrey Dahmer. No shackles, no tears, no rage, just calm. He had confessed to everything, every detail, every murder, 17 counts, 17 lives, described with the precision of a surgeon and the detachment of a man listing groceries. He told the court how he lured the men back, how he drugged them, strangled them, cut them apart, photographed their bodies. He spoke of boiling skulls, of eating human hearts, of trying to make zombies from the living. He described it all with no emotion, as if he was giving a cooking recipe. Even the judge paused. "It is impossible to grasp the magnitude of what has been done here," he said. "It
Jeff
defies
told us when
morality.
he was in
It
prison
defies reason."
that he
Dahmer's defense didn't argue innocence. They argued insanity. Psychologists took the stand. Some called him a deeply disturbed necrophiliac. Others called him legally sane, fully aware of his actions. One doctor said, "He killed because it brought him peace. Not joy, not hatred. Just peace." The prosecution countered with a single point. He knew it was wrong, and he did it anyway. He cleaned, he lied, he hid bodies. That, they said, was awareness. That was sanity. Public reaction was split. Some saw Dahmer as a monster. Others saw him as a byproduct of failure, of a broken home, unchecked mental illness, and a system that looked away too long. But for the families of the victims, there was no gray area, just grief. One father shouted in court, "You took my son's body, and you used it like it was nothing. I hope you burn in hell." On February 15th, 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences, a total of 957 years behind bars. He showed no emotion, no final words, just a quiet nod and a walk out of the room. But for many, justice wasn't enough. Because what Dahmer left behind wasn't just a body count. It was a question. How did no one stop him? How does a man become this and stay hidden for so long? Inside those prison walls, there were no more victims. But there was still one final chapter to come. Up next, the end of Dahmer and how karma found him inside a prison bathroom. In prison, Dahmer was quiet, polite, helpful. He mopped floors, ate alone, read the Bible, told guards he had found God. But no one forgot what he'd done. Not the families, not the inmates, not Christopher Scarver. November 28, 1994. Dahmer was cleaning the prison bathrooms with 2 other inmates. No guards, no cameras. Scarver walked in behind him, a steel bar in his hand. He smashed Dahmer's skull, crushed Jesse Anderson next, dropped the weapon, waited. No rage, no words, just blood. Dahmer died an hour later, multiple skull fractures, face shattered beyond recognition. The news hit like lightning. He was gone, not by law, but by consequence. Families of the victims spoke. One said, "Now we can breathe." Another said,
What's going
"God did what the system couldn't."
These men are with the police.
Police were forced to answer. Why did it take 13 years? Why were reports ignored? Why were black, brown, and gay victims treated like they didn't matter? An internal investigation exposed it all: neglect, bias, a system that looked away again and again. Officers were fired, training was reformed, but the stain never left Milwaukee. Across the country, the case became a warning. Communities built outreach programs, LGBTQ shelters saw more funding, reporting systems changed. Some families started foundations. Others spoke in schools. One mother opened a shelter for kids who felt invisible, like her son once was. Dahmer's death wasn't justice, but it was an ending. Clean, brutal, deserved. And for the first time in years, the dead could finally stay buried. 17 men, drugged, strangled, dismembered, photographed, stored in acid, in freezers, in the walls. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't just kill, he erased. He rebuilt the bodies. He kept pieces like trophies, hearts, skulls, genitals. He didn't want victims, he wanted objects. Quiet, still, forever his. The system failed. Police ignored screams, dismissed missing persons reports, because the victims were gay, brown, poor, disposable, and he knew it. This wasn't just about murder. It was about who we choose to protect and who we leave behind. Today, Dahmer is gone, but the scars remain. In families, in files, in a city still haunted by the smell coming from apartment 213. If this story chilled you, don't disappear. subscribe, follow the channel. More cases are coming. Darker, deeper, real. And if there's a name you want us to uncover, leave it in the comments. We'll find them.